Now, on this episode of The Entrepreneurial Edge, we'll be taking a look at two woman entrepreneurs. Fitting as it is, Women's Day on the 9th of August, that day when tens of thousands of women activists took their courage in their hands and marched on the South African Parliament asking for their rights. And a lot of people got arrested on the day, and it's part of the struggle forward. Now, with me here, I have two women who no doubt would have marched on Parliament if they'd been around in 1956. We've got Anne Pratt and Stella Buthelezi, two of our guests for this episode. Just to start off with you, Anne, you're a self-made businesswoman, a leader and a multi-awarded director of one of South Africa's leading executive search companies. And Stella Buthelezi, you are a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur who learned at your father's knee, and you've got your own businesses doing property and cosmetics, I understand. To start out, the father influence in both of you. You were very, very close to your father, as you said before the show. How do you think that affected you in terms of becoming an entrepreneur when you grew up?
Well, my father was quite a pioneering guy in his own right. He came out from the UK to South Africa, so I think his sense of adventure, his pioneering spirit, and he travelled a lot, and I think that also opens us up to very diverse, different environments.
Now, Stella, you grew up in the Eastern Cape, and I'm going to mention your father's name on this programme because it is a name to conjure with, Mr. Gosley Speedo Nondumo. Now, you say when you grew up in the Eastern Cape, he was something of a real entrepreneur.
Yes, he was.
How did he affect you when you were growing up?
I think I'm the person I am today because of my dad. I was very close to him growing up. You know, I've followed him everywhere. I mean, you know, my earliest memories, going to the market with him, always around him. In fact, at times I'd even go to meetings with him, you know, so he's a great figure. He's a great man with a big heart. And yeah, so everything, I'm my father's girl, you know.
And just briefly, how did he make his money as an entrepreneur?
My father started, I mean, back in the days, I suppose, you know, as a black man, we know the history of the country, started off, you know, with a house shop and then progressed to a small supermarket. And then from there on, you know, the supermarket grew. There was a own consumption. In fact, I think he got the first own consumption, you know, to sell wines in the supermarket, and then had a butchery. And then from there on, had a couple of service stations and bottle stores. And growing up, we would go, me and my brothers, I'm an only girl with 3 brothers, would go and work in the businesses. So it was just part of my growing up life. You know, I grew up behind a counter, behind a till, pumping petrol, over the counter at the bottle store. You
name it, you were there. Okay. So, Anne, what was that moment in your life when you thought, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to work for myself?
You know, interesting question. I was with Unilever, recruited from university at that point in time. I really thought I'd do the whole multinational corporate thing my entire life. But I think the turning point was I had a part-time fashion clothing business. And although I was the senior brand manager in Lever Brothers, that year I actually earned more as a 50% partner in my part-time fashion clothing business. And I just thought, you know, there's something about entrepreneurship that is different, adventurous and higher risk, and I liked the unpredictability of that. So I think that was a turning moment.
And how long did that first business survive, the one you started?
I didn't start it. I actually joined it with a partner. The business did very well. It sustained, and then I went on to other ventures from there.
But everyone says this about, you know, it was a great decision in their lives to be an entrepreneur. But surely being an entrepreneur as well is headaches, staff problems, paperwork, tax returns. I mean, surely isn't that a thing to put people off? Didn't your dad put you off?
No, that didn't put me off. Like I say, for me, it was just a natural progression in life. So the challenges, I actually enjoy them. You know, I mean, there's challenges in any aspect of life anyway, even if you're not in business. So it's just how you handle them and you soldier on.
I mean, do you have any regrets of being an entrepreneur?
Not at all. I've loved it, and you know, I've been involved in different businesses. I was involved in a restaurant during my MBA. I had another fashion clothing business after that before I went back to corporate, and yeah, so it's been a stepping stone, but it's an exciting, pioneering adventure.
And what difficulties do you face now? We're talking about Women's Month, as women starting out as entrepreneurs. But surely, I mean, the Constitution in South Africa is behind you. You've got equal rights. You've got everything. The field is wide open. And what difficulties do you still face?
Well, you know, my business, or my property business, that is, you know, it's commercial property. It's very much male-dominated. So sometimes it's just not being taken seriously. But, you know, it's not, it doesn't bother me because, you know, I take myself seriously. But I think that's, you know, it can put one off at times. And also I have a very successful husband. So sometimes it's also like, you know, oh, bored housewife, you know, you're just not taken seriously enough at times.
It must hurt a bit.
Not really, no.
Doesn't hurt?
No. Very few things rattle me.
And do you get this problem and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think, you know, there are challenges sometimes for women. I think, you know, yeah, I think it's also about how seriously women take themselves. I think the initial startup is more difficult because one has many more balls in the air, trying to balance different things. You've got startup capital, you've got to establish a reputation, a brand name. But with time, I think it gets a bit easier. And as one builds one's brand image and brand equity. But having said that, I think something I learned from my first MD at Lever Brothers is beware of the Garfield fat cat syndrome. So I think one of the challenges is to keep on one's toes and keep on re-engineering oneself as one goes along.
Stella, what do you think women have to do to make it in this 21st century?
Well, nothing new. Same thing that women have been doing all their lives. You know, we focused, we hard workers, we can multitask. You know, I mean, our mothers did this. You know, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're an entrepreneur. So it's really nothing new. You must just keep doing what has always been done by our mothers, by our grandmothers.
But I can tell you in my profession, journalism, I'll be perfectly frank with you, good journalism sees no gender, sees no race, no nothing. You've got good journalists, you've got bad journalists, and that's it. Is it the same in your entrepreneurial world?
I think in the kind of industry we're in executive search, I think often there are a lot of women in our industry, and I think we do quite well. I think we have that sixth sense that we tap into and use well. I think also, in a way, I think my femininity is part of our competitive advantage. I think women who try and emulate men, I think often miss the trick. I think it's capitalizing on being a woman and loving one's femininity, and I think often that works to good advantage.
Actually, speaking of which, got a little motto here from you, Stella. It says, your motto in life is, a woman who aspires only to reach the level of a man in life is not ambitious enough. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, just, I mean, imagine with us, we run homes, we run businesses, we even help our husbands. And I know you guys would never be able to cope with all that.
Depends on the guy, I suppose. But well, what do you think about that statement? I mean, do you think that women can aspire well ahead of males in any business?
Yeah, I think, you know, Chris, I think it's about partnership. You know, I'm very big on gender partnership. We published the first qualitative research on women on boards in the country, and seeing that women bring something different to boards. So I think when we embrace partnership and diversity, I think we get a better end result.
Is there any time when you've thought, Stella, I mean, you seem to be handling it quite well when you get guys who don't take you seriously, whatever. Is there any time when you thought maybe perhaps you've had enough, when you can't take this anymore?
Never.
Never at all?
Not at all. I would not do it any differently.
Anne, what about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Stella. I think it's also about re-engineering oneself. I'm very focused and disciplined about that. Every year I write a life plan, a purpose, a vision, reflect on the year gone by, and set new goals. And I think it's just about onwards and upwards and, you know, one's own growth in that.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit more in the second half about these things like the glass ceiling, etc. But just to finish off this half, just tell me how you started out. I mean, how small did you start out when you started as an entrepreneur?
Well, I'm a psychologist by profession, and then I started off working actually for a property company, a commercial property company. And I knew nothing at that point in time, you know, about a commercial. Although I had an idea, because my father's also a developer. Although that side of his business, by the time he started, I'm the eldest at home, so I was already out of, you know, home. And I actually liked it because I was dealing with people. I'm a people's person. So as much as I was not, you know, practicing psychology anymore, but I was going out, meeting clients, different people, and I actually enjoyed it. And I worked there for 2 years, and then I started my own company 2002, and I've never looked back.
And yourself? I mean, you talked about your clothing business you were running. What other little ventures got you along the way when you were young and starting out?
I think, yeah, it was getting experience in different kinds of situations, but in quite a low-risk environment. So while I was doing a full-time MBA at Wits, I had an interest in a curry restaurant in Rocky Street. After that, we launched another fashion clothing business. But I also had the security of kind of full-time corporate employment, and I think that lowered the risk. I was able to build up a year's capital before starting. That was good advice from an FD friend of mine. So I took quite a lot of the risk out early on and got different kinds of experience and kind of turning around businesses, then starting them. And then I was MD of Woodburn Management Selection, and then we decided, you know, let's go on our own, and we turned up globally. But again, I'd learned the industry, so I felt confident about that. I had an established brand within myself. And as I say, again, from a risk management point of view, I think that reduced the risk a lot.
And just both of you, just quickly before we close the half, I mean, when you're walking around, you're not like other people. You're always looking and thinking, that's interesting, I might have a go at that. And what is it like for you when you're just walking down the street? You always look for opportunities where you can make money. What sort of things do you look at?
I'm very diverse. I look at, I mean, right now, you know, I'm involved in mining, property, and I've just recently launched a cosmetic, you know, shopping, Morningside shopping center. So anything that makes sense to me, business-wise, and yeah, so. And
Anne, briefly you're always on the hunt?
Yeah, I think, well, you know, I come from a strategic marketing background in Lever Brothers and Unilever, so I think, you know, I'm always looking at big picture. I listen a lot to people. I also come from a psychology background, economics. So when I hear a gap and a need being expressed, it's like, oh, that's an interesting business concept, and I get very excited about creating new concepts and yeah, going out there and seeing them work.